We are live, you guys. I am beyond thrilled to have my guest who's sitting across from me, which I'll introduce in 1 second, to be here in the studio. This is a conversation that needed to happen many years ago, and Marty and I have been exchanging conversations, and he lives in Santa Barbara, but you know how LA people are, we just don't want to drive, but we're here right now, so you guys, you're not going to believe this. I have the author of The Brand Gap, of Zag, of The Brand Flip, of Scramble, the Brand Dictionary, a total of 8 books, I believe, 8 books. He literally wrote the book on branding. He's here. You guys are going to stick around for this episode. We're going to get into a lot of things, how he got started, what he's up to today, and why are we even having this conversation. So let's get right into it. Marty Neumeier, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. At the future, yes, and the future is definitely here. I can see it. I can smell it.
Does the future smell good?
Yes, the future smells good. Yeah.
Smells like crisp dollar bills or fresh printing or something like that. Okay, so why are we talking today? I want to set the tone and intention. Initially, it was because you and I were producing a workshop here, or at least I shouldn't say producing, we're hosting the workshop that you're having here at the end of February called the Brand Master Class. And I wanted to have you on, so in case somebody has been sleeping under a rock somehow and they haven't heard about you or the workshop, this would be a great opportunity to find out about this. But the class is sold out. You guys snooze, you lose. So the next opportunity to see Marty in the United States do his 2-day workshop, which there's a certification part, which is incredible, is in Philly.
Yeah,
that's your next best time, or best opportunity to do this. So you guys will include the links in the description below if you guys want to attend that, to go to Philly. I'm going to tell you, this is something you do not want to miss. I agreed to host this just because I want to learn from the master himself. Now, before we get into all the brand gap, the brand goodness and definitions and misunderstanding and dialogue, conversation and debates that have happened prior to this, I want to take us back in time. So we're going to rewind the tape, because we were just talking, we're both Art Center people. Now, you have a few years ahead of me, and the program was very different back then. Take me back.
Oh,
tell me about Art Center
in the mid-'60s was a really cool place to be. It was in an old, used to be a girls' school, I think, in Hollywood, 3rd Street. And it smelled like pipe tobacco, because every design teacher, art teacher there smoked a pipe. And probably wore a wool vest.
Yes.
And, but it was a cool place, and you get a lot of teachers who are actually working professionals, and I mean, it was a lifesaver for me, because my world opened up when I finally got to do what I always wanted to do, which was be a commercial artist. At 7 years old, I put my stake in the ground in grammar school, and that's what I wanted to be, and I stuck to that the whole time.
And you knew that at 7 years old?
I knew it at 7
Holy
years
cow.
old. Yeah, and everybody said, "What? Commercial?"
Wow, you're ahead of your time for sure.
Well, you get these ideas in your head, and you just, it becomes who you are, and so that's I'm just marking my days until I get to go to art school.
Right.
So anyway, it was a great place to be. There was no graphic design track. They didn't use that term really. It was just sort of coming out at the time. You could go into advertising, or you could be an illustrator, and so I took both of those, figuring that graphic design was somewhere in there, and later they added the graphic design program. But a great experience. I lasted 2 years until I couldn't afford it anymore, because it was $50 a semester. Where am I going to get $50?
That's outrageous. $50.
$50.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, just for context, you guys, Art Center a semester now is, I think, somewhere around $22,000 a semester. And this is important to note, because some of the things that we're going to be talking about later about money and what we charge, just keep that in mind, all you young whippersnappers out there. It used to cost $50, and Marty could not afford it.
Yeah, but my first really big job after I got out, really great campaign that I worked on, I got $50 per ad. So I made it back. I mean, I made the whole thing back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you living in LA at this time, going to Art Center?
At that time, I had moved. I left school. I went to Santa Barbara, got married there.
Okay.
Started a freelance business. There were no designers, no graphic designers. You go look in the yellow pages where you'd find people, and there's nothing. So I had to actually have them put that in there for me, and I was the only one under the graphic designer heading. And I had to, as part of my job as being the only graphic designer, I had to explain it to would-be clients. I had to tell them what it was and why they should pay any money for it at all. And they'd say, "Oh, you're like, yeah, you're a commercial artist. Oh, that's old school. No, we're serious professionals now. Explain why it's going to be good." And that exercise of having to explain it, like what's the business value of design, was really good. And I think that probably set me on this course of what I'm doing now, is explaining all this stuff and how business works and how design and business connects together.
What's surprising for me to hear this story is I know you mostly through your books and through your writing, and just how clear you write, how you articulate very complex ideas that are very tangible and just very easy to digest. So how did you develop this ability to write? Did you teach yourself? Where did this come from?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from writing.
Okay.
And one thing I have to interject before I answer that question is that what I've noticed about graphic design and probably other kinds of communication design is that language is super important in it, even if you're not the word person. So that's what I discovered pretty early, is that I can't do really award-winning cool work unless I have good writing to go with it, because it'll drag it down to a lower level if it's not great. And the words and the pictures have to work together, so 1 and 1 gives you 3. So how am I going to do that? And I just started, really looking closely at how award-winning work sounded, looked like, how the words and pictures went together. I started just teaching myself how to do it. I didn't really like doing it. I didn't like writing. It was hard. It was harder than graphic design. I mean, graphic design is like eating candy. It's like you have a piece of candy and it's really good, so you want another one.
Right.
And writing is like, oh God, I'm tired after that one. That's like, it took everything out of me. So it took many, many, many years before writing was pleasurable at all. But I always did like it when it came out well, and when it made my work look really great. It was just like, yeah. And then, it would win awards. And so I had that experience of doing it all and having control over both sides of communication, the words and the pictures. And that really taught me a lot, and it started leading me into thinking about how other things connect. How does design connect with business? Where's the connection? Because my clients didn't really see it, right? And I wasn't sure exactly how I was contributing to their business, because they wouldn't tell me really what their business was or how they were achieving success. And so I had to figure that out so that I could be in that conversation.
So many of while we're on this subject, so many people in our audience and our community have a really difficult time answering that question. What value does design or writing creativity have on a company? Because they're feeling that pressure of doing work for less, and they don't even know how to articulate that. So here you are in the 60s, 70s in Santa Barbara, and you're already figuring this stuff out. How could you advise or help some of these younger people that are out there right now who have a hard time communicating what is design, what's the value of it? I would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, so business has its own aims. I mean, it's really profit driven. There's more to it than that. It's not just money.
Right.
It shouldn't be. And design has its own history, and we all love that history, and we want to be like those people that we admire in our business. And if it's a whole new thing, we want to be the leaders in that. But it's kind of divorced from business unless you connect it yourself. And that place that it connects is branding. That's the area where everyone plays together, right? So whatever skills you have as a designer, as a creative person, they become weaponized when you understand branding. Suddenly you know where to aim those skills, that talent, So it's a force multiplier. It's like, so once I understood that branding is the area where we can all play together and we understand each other's business and what we're doing together, it probably made me about 10 times as valuable as I was in the early days when I was just copying what Milton Glaser did or Paul Rand before him. So I actually knew how this hopefully award-winning work would actually be driving business forward, and I could explain it from my little corner of what they were doing, how it was helping them, and then they'd appreciate it more, pay me more, let me into more parts of the company that I wasn't in before. So I realized that even though business wasn't something I was ever really very interested in, I had to be interested in it if I wanted my work to be great.
So many questions here. I feel like I'm going to splinter into 1,000 parts and pieces here, in that the term branding, I think, unfortunately, has become like people use it interchangeably with logo design, identity design, or even sometimes typography. And maybe we need to set the record straight. And I know you're the best person to tell us, what is branding, Marty?
Yeah, so let's start with what branding isn't.
Okay.
It's because it's not a lot of things people say it is.
Yes.
It's not a logo.
Okay.
A logo is a very useful tool for a business, but it's not the brand. It's a symbol for the brand. A brand is not a product. So when people talk about this brand, buying this brand or that brand, they're really talking about buying one product or another product. The brand is not that. People say the brand is a promise the company makes to customers, and there's some truth in that.
Yep.
I mean, it does end up acting as a promise, but that's not what it is either. Advertising people like to say, well, it's the sum of all the impressions that a company makes on an audience.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you're trying to sell a lot of impressions, I can see where that might be useful to you, but from a business's point of view, why do they want that? Right? So, and how does that help
Self-serving definition
creative
there.
people understand what they're doing?
Right.
So none of those things are really what branding is. A brand is a result. It's a customer's gut feeling about a product, a service, or a company. It ends up in their heads, in their hearts, right? They take whatever raw materials you throw at them and they make something out of it. But they're making it, they're creating it. And so in a sense, when you create a brand, you're not creating one brand, you're creating millions of brands, like however many customers or people in your audience.
Oh.
Each one has a different brand of you. So a brand is like a reputation, right? So it's your business reputation, and everyone's going to be a little bit different about what that reputation is. And that's okay, as long as you've got it corralled mostly where you want it, and that it's beneficial to the company. So we tend to look at companies and designers tend to look at branding as, from our point of view, like this is something we're doing. We're telling a story. We're making a claim. We're making a pitch, and that's what we do. But that's not what a brand is. A brand is the result of that. And if you don't start there, you don't know what you're doing. You actually don't know what you think you know what you're doing, but you don't. So from a designer's point of view, I mean, I always tended to be this way. It's like it was my gut feeling, right, about whether this is going to work or not. And then I would sell it as hard as I could to get the client to sign off on it. From the client's point of view, they're going, well, it's a checklist. I got the logo, I got the tagline, I got the ad campaign, click, check, and they think they're done.
Right.
None of that's right. What's right is what happens in people's heads. Like, what have we achieved? Like, what's the reputation that we've created through the products we're putting out, like the design of the products, the messaging we're putting out, the look and feel of them, our culture, how does that affect people, how our employees behave, how is that affecting our reputation? All that stuff counts. So it's a big world, and it actually takes in almost all of business. Not so much finance, but finance is involved too, because finance has to greenlight all these things. But almost everybody in a company is, affecting the brand, doing something with the brand, doing it for the brand, or hurting the brand. So you got to think of it that way. Now, this is not well understood. So anybody who gets this and can explain it is in a very powerful position with the company, right? And designers are just naturally good at this. Like, if we opened our minds to it, and learned a few skills, learned a little bit more about business, we suddenly have a lot more control over how our work is perceived by our clients, how it works in the marketplace, how much we get paid for it. And at some point, when you get really good at this, you don't have to charge by the hour. You charge by the results, or not even that. You just charge for being involved at the very highest level. And it can be huge amounts of money. So the range of, like, starting out as an hourly performer getting up to where you're an expert in something is huge. I mean, the difference is like, it's millions of dollars in your income. So it's worth doing, is what I'm saying. So no matter what skills you have creatively, if you find out how they apply in the world of branding, they're suddenly more valuable. Same skills, but you will be doing it differently. And you'll have the confidence that you're doing it really, really well, and you can explain why.
Whew. I didn't want to say one word because that was perfect. This is unscripted. Marty's just talking from decades of experience in writing and articulating this. It's very clear to me. I'm trying to imagine myself in the audience right now listening to this. Like, you mean I could have a more profound impact on the business, Marty? Are you saying there's more to this branding than the logo or the product? And then it's like you're talking about business, and I can make more money. I can charge for the result or even my involvement. This sounds very exciting. So if they're watching this and they're in the traditional graphic design space and they make things visual, what are some easy, like, let me just get started in this world? Do I have to learn how to write? Do I have to take a business course or get a business degree? Point me in the right direction, maybe not the whole plan, but just help me out.
You know, the business degree is interesting. I've talked to some people who have sort of learned how to do their craft, and then they've taken business MBA classes. And I think that's really helped a lot. But you have to figure out how to put those together, because you're not going to hear anything about design in an MBA class. Nothing, zero, zilch. They don't want to think about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's your job to get them to think about it. So that's why I wrote my books. I would just say start there. And anybody else who writes books like mine, if there are that many people, but where they're trying to connect creativity and business. You have to connect them. And you can figure this out yourself, but I think it helps to get inspired by it and get a few principles under your belt. And then suddenly the world will open up for you and you go, oh my God, it's like, I'm really powerful if I understand what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
Paul Rand, a famous graphic designer, told me that when I, this magazine here, Critique, I did this for 5 years until it almost killed me. And sort of similar ideas, like how can I bring designers closer to being masterful?
Yeah.
Like, how do I teach them about business? How do we talk more about the ideas behind design instead of just the look and feel of it?
Yeah.
And when I did the first issue, I sent it to Paul Rand, who was old at this time. He was, I didn't know it, but he would only live a few months after that.
Oh, wow.
And he looked at the magazine and he says, yeah, this is good. You got some good people in here. If I were you, I would just only show good work. Don't show any bad work. Don't show crap like those other magazines. Just, who's kind of like that cigar chewing kind of
Yes.
gruff sort of person. He says, you got to teach designers what they're doing. That's what he said. And I thought, gosh, that's right. I mean, I really didn't know what I was doing. And nobody ever gave me that advice before. I did get some really good advice when I was a young designer. I went to a poster biennial in Colorado where they have this biennial international poster conference competition, and the winners are there, and you're meeting these famous people that have been in Graphis magazine and so forth. And I was just really excited to have won an award and be talking to those people. And I ran into, we all have our plates of food and we're sort of schmoozing and everything. And I run into this old guy. He seemed like he was probably 90, but he's probably only 70. I was pretty young, so 25 or something. And he says, so you're, what do you do? You're a designer. I go, yeah, I was a designer too. I used to art direct Graphis magazine when it first started. And I said, whoa, I think I've seen your name before. And he goes, oh yeah, I'm almost retired. I mean, I'm still working and everything because I love it, but let me just, you're young, let me give you a piece of advice. And I said, oh, okay. He says, okay, just got to tell me one or two things about how you work. And I said, all right. He says, well, so you work at a desk or a table? And I said, yeah, I have a table with a drawing board on it. He goes, oh, that's good. says, okay, is the table like up against the wall, like you're facing the wall, or is it out in the middle? Or I said, well, it's kind of like it's one side of it's against the wall and then it's sticking out into the space.
Okay.
He goes, oh yeah, that's good, that's good. Okay, so here's my advice. When you finish your sketch or your drawing or your work, whatever you're working on, get up and go to the other side of the table. I said, yeah. He goes, no, that's it. And it took me like about a minute to like, oh, all right, I get it. Look at it from the other point of view. And he goes, exactly. Exactement, he says French. So I just thought that was charming and wonderful, and I thought, you know, that's a great metaphor for really what we should be doing. We have to look at our work from the reader's point of view, the user's point of view, the client's point of view. We cannot look at it just from our own point of view. It's just not going to, it's not going to get us anywhere. We have to look at it from a different point of view. So I think that stuck in my mind for a long time, and eventually that's why I started testing my work. I wanted to make sure that I actually nailed it, because it's going to get judged, right? Sooner or later. It's going to be judged in the marketplace. So what if I could get judged before it goes in the marketplace and correct it?
We're going to get into more of that. I just want to make sure the pro group or the YouTube community that's tuning in to watch, Jonah and Mark are checking out your questions, and the questions that are relevant to what we're talking about, we will bring up to Marty. Now, this idea of testing is going to make a lot of sense in a little bit. But before we get there, we're going to do like a Quentin Tarantino style edit here. We're going to take you back to Santa Barbara, and then you moved to Silicon Valley at some point. I think you said you spent 15 years in Santa Barbara. Basically, the only listing under graphic design in the yellow pages. Young people won't know what we're talking about, but I know what you're talking about. You decided to move to Palo Alto, and you're going to work there. I think something very special is happening with Steve Jobs and Apple and all that kind of stuff. Take us, like, what made you go out there? How did you relocate your business? How did you get business? I want to know all this stuff.
It was such a wrenching change for my wife and me and our daughter, because we lived in Santa Barbara, and even though it was very difficult from a business standpoint, it was beautiful from a living standpoint, right?
Yes.
And we had to leave that to make enough money to send our daughter to college eventually, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was the tough, we just weren't getting anywhere. So,
Yeah.
I started hearing a lot about Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, and it seemed like not a big thing to me at the time.
Yeah.
But then I talked to a few people who were like investors and stuff, and they were saying like, no, Silicon Valley's like hot, hot, hot. It's like, at the time we were in a recession. The rest of the world was in a recession. Silicon Valley's hot? You're kidding me. Oh yeah, man, you don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I started just looking around at like what companies were up there. I mean, there was no internet or anything, so there was no way to easily find this out.
I mean, were they even computer? I mean, what year are we talking about here?
Well,
80s,
that's
right?
the reason I wanted to move is because the Apple Macintosh, well, it's almost ready. It was ready to come out.
Almost ready? Okay.
They had I saw the Lisa.
Okay.
Apple's team brought the Lisa to Santa Barbara at this trade show that had like 3 booths.
Yeah.
And they were all just these like little funny desktop computers. And then there's this beautiful one with beautiful graphics. And I went, oh my God, where did this come from? Oh, Palo Alto or Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So I started looking at what companies were up there, and I saw all these like Atari was up there, and Hewlett Packard, and then I started finding them on the map, and I'm like, these are like all within like, I don't know, 5 square miles. All of these companies, like these are the clients that, they're right there. All you have to do is like move in and say, I'm here, and so that's what we did. And it was just that easy. Yeah. I mean, we started with a phone number only. That's just a test. You could get a phone number that looked like it was from that area, but it really rang in your, so that was a nice, tricky little thing. And so I'd get calls, or I'd cold call companies and say, can I show my portfolio? Because that's what you did. And they'd say, so I called Apple, and I said, So I said, can I show my portfolio? And I got like the Apple creative team. They said, yeah, come on in. How about Monday morning? So I get in the car, Sunday night, and I drive up, and I stay over at a friend's house.
Are you still living in Santa Barbara at this time?
I was living in Santa Barbara.
So you got the Palo Alto phone number.
400-mile drive to the first meeting.
Okay.
Right, but they can't know that, right? Because they got to think I'm local, or they're not going to give me any work. So I just drive up, and I stay overnight, and I get there, and they forgot about the appointment. Like I missed it totally. I had to drive back.
Oh my God.
It's like, didn't mean anything to them, right? But to me, it was like everything.
Right.
So, I made that work. I landed Sun Microsystems. I got Atari. I was doing this wonderful work from Atari from Santa Barbara. And then I installed one of my former employees up there in a little one of those, like, workspace offices where you get a cubicle.
Yeah.
And she was doing more work than I was getting in Santa Barbara. So I said, okay, that's it. We got to be there.
Yeah.
We packed up the kid and the parakeets and the cats and the dogs and stuck them in our little
Noah's
car.
Ark here.
Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
Drove up there. It was this horrible, horrible thing. My daughter hated it. She was just starting high school. It was just like it was really wrenching.
Yeah.
But as soon as we got there, it was like the roof fell in with work. All I had to do is say, look, this is where I started to realize specialization was really powerful.
Okay, everybody lean in, listen to this part.
I just said, this is a big lie. It's the sort of fake it till you make it thing.
Yes.
I told clients, look, all I do is high tech. That's all I do. Other designers, they'll do a little high tech, then they'll do a museum. They're just not dedicated to this. I'm all about high tech. Like I had done maybe 2 jobs for tech companies, but I could show those 2 jobs.
Yeah.
So and they said, hey, that's great, because nobody really, takes this stuff seriously. And I got a lot of work. And so I said, this is totally working, right? And my income quadrupled first year.
Yeah.
So all I did is bring the same skills I had to a different place. Right?
Literally.
Yeah, into a situation where there was a framework for it.
Mm-hmm. So you did a couple of really smart business things. May I ask, like at that time, how old you are? Your daughter's going into high school, so she's like 15 years old.
Yeah.
How old were you back then?
Let's see. So I must have been 30, early 30s.
Early 30s, okay.
Yeah.
So here you are in your early 30s. You realize you got to go where the client is, because they ain't coming to you.
No.
You also did something that most designers would never do. You had the guts to pick up the phone and just call people and say, hey, I'm in town, let's do something,
the hardest thing I ever did. I'm just, they say that if you run a business, you're probably an extrovert, and I think you need to be. But I think a lot of designers are not born extroverts, so they have to learn to be extrovert or fake it.
Yeah.
Like just force themselves to be extroverted when needed.
Right.
And that's what I did. But what makes that a lot easier is if you have something that the person on the other side of the fence or the phone or the computer really wants, it's not a cold call. It's a very warm call. So you just have to have that thing and be able to express it. So, I would say, look, you don't know me, but I'm an award-winning designer. Like I thought that meant something. Maybe it did at the time.
Yeah.
And I only do high tech, and I'm doing identities and advertising and just like everything for small startup technology companies. And I just love to show you what I've done for X, X, and X. Sun Microsystems, Atari, Apple, because I was involved in the launch of the Macintosh Plus. So I had some things to show there. And it was like, yeah, come on over. So there was just really not this sort of distance like there is now. And like there was for me forever until I had something I could specialize in and say, look, this thing is what I own.
Right.
Nobody else does this. If that's what you want, we need to meet. And I would, yeah, okay. Or they would say, no, we don't need anything now, and that's fine.
Right.
Later they might.
I have so many questions about what was your instinct or what drove you to say, of all the things I can sell, it seems obvious now, but back then, I'm just going to tell people I do high tech, and I only have 2 things under my belt. It was because
seems pretty silly. Looking back,
and it's pretty awesome that you figured that out because again, just like and I'm seeing patterns here. You go to Santa Barbara, like I'm the only graphic designer, I'm just going to take over this category. Yeah. And then you go to Palo Alto, it's like a lot of computer companies. I should just tell them I'm high tech. Yeah. I mean, where did that come from, and how did you know like that's what I want to say? Because so many people are afraid that by staking a claim or specializing, they're limiting all these opportunities when it's actually the opposite?
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's counterintuitive, isn't it?
It is.
So, as a designer, you're creative, and people who are creative like to do lots of things.
Yes.
I mean, they want to be Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, really. They want to be Renaissance people.
Yeah.
And it's fun to do that. But the world doesn't want that from you. And so I had to understand that. And I think I understood it, like in the first 10 years of being a designer. I'd watch how illustrators got famous. So in the old days, I don't think there are any illustrators the way they were then, but you had all these magazines, and there's Playboy magazine. You always wanted to be in that one because it got a lot of readership.
Yep.
So an illustrator, if would settle on one style, one look
Yep.
that was unique and cool, and then that illustrator got hot, and within 5 years was dominating it, and then had another 5 years. Until they would be out of business, basically, because everyone had seen everything they could do, and the world moves on. So there's like a 10-year career that they could, and if they wanted to change after that and adopt another style, they could probably have a second act. But I'm thinking, well, I don't want to be the kind of person that has a 10-year career, but I have to admit, they really get successful fast by doing one thing. And I said, what if I applied that to something else about my business, like the kind of work I did, or the kind of, in this case, Silicon Valley case, the kind of business that I specialized in, so that I'd get a lot of word of mouth. So people would say, oh, you need a designer? This guy did everything. He did the whole thing. It's like amazing, like brought us from nowhere to being highly visible. You got it. Here, have my guy.
Yeah.
And so that was my original idea when I got there. And then I found out that actually Silicon Valley was moving past that really quickly, and it was so big, getting so big, so fast, that that was no longer a specialty. That was too general to say, I do identity and everything for a company. Like I do all their communication, because software companies didn't talk to hardware companies, who didn't talk to chip companies, who didn't talk to, they were all separate little universes, and you had to pick one. So eventually I decided that I would be the guy you go to if you need retail software packaging, which was just starting.
Wow.
It was just starting, and it was like, I really didn't want to specialize, but I could see why it worked. It's like, it just makes the decision so easy for clients. They go, well, we need this. We got this checklist. We need the package. Who's going to do that? Who does these things? Joe, go find a package designer. And they go out and get Landor or somebody. And I said, no, I'm going to be the guy that does it. And that means I have to do only that.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I say. That's what I have to say.
Right.
If I do other things, I'm just not going to show those things. I'm just going to master this, and I'm going to be obviously mastering it so that I can prove it, and then I'll get it all for as long as that lasts. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did, and that worked amazingly well. And it was only about 2 years before we were charging more than Landor, and more than anybody actually, because Landor didn't know what they were doing, and couldn't explain why they were doing what they were doing.
I want to get into all that. Mark, you flagged me. You're like, make a little signal and then I'll acknowledge you. Just give me 1 second. I do want to talk about this a little bit, just to kind of re-articulate what you've said. There's a lot of stuff to absorb here. So you started out kind of broad as I'm a graphic designer, communication, advertising guy, and you thought that was specialized enough. And then, nope, maybe it's just identity design, or maybe it's just for the high-tech industry. And then it became software retail packaging. You went narrow and narrow.
Business software.
Business.
Because that's where...
I love that.
Yeah.
Business software retail packaging.
Yeah.
So if somebody needed that, there was one game in town, that was your game.
Yeah.
And you dominated.
Yeah.
And you went against, and people don't know this, Landor is a ginormous operation, a multinational corporation, right? It's just...
High prices, too.
High prices, okay.
Yeah.
Mark, we have a question either on branding or specialization or something like that. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so we have a good question from the pro group from Ash here. So he's asking, how do you measure the effectiveness of branding in terms of ROI?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a good question.
So traditionally people say, oh, you can't measure it because it's
Right.
too soft. It's too amorphous. But you can measure it in terms of engagement with customers, and you can measure that from year to year, and it's cheap and it's almost free to do if any company wants to do it. My book, The Brand Flip, has a really good formula for that, and it's called the Brand Ladder. It measures how people move up from how they regard your company, so how your reputation is doing. So
there it is. There's the brand ladder.
yeah. So Chris, what's at the bottom of the ladder?
The bottom of the ladder is satisfaction.
Right. So are customers satisfied with the company and what they put out? Well, that's a pretty low bar these days, right?
Yeah.
Satisfied means, it did what they said it would do, and maybe I'll buy it again.
It feels like that's
And then from there you go up to what?
the next step up is delight.
Delight. So delight is when you're going, wow, I didn't know it'd be this good. This is really cool, and I'm going to tell my friends, right? So you can measure that. And the next one is?
Engagement.
Engagement. So at engagement, you're like, as a customer, you're going, I love this company, and I really feel like I belong with this brand, with this, I love this product. Let's say Apple. I'm really an Apple person. I just buy everything they come out with because I know it's going to be good. I just, even if I've never even thought of that before, that category, here comes an Apple Watch. I didn't even know I wanted a watch. I'm going to get it.
Right.
So that's an engaged customer. And then from there,
You have three things under engagement I want to point out to them, because I have the book in front of me. I'm not a genius here. Automatic repurchase is how you can tell. You just, with that question, they launch a new thing, I'm in, I'm bought in. The emotional attachment. You've talked about this in many of your books about how when Steve Jobs passed away, there was like vigils and people were like crying and just eulogies and all kinds of stuff. There was an emotional attachment. You don't feel that way about a lot of companies, and the sense of belonging. Like I'm an Apple Tribe guy, and I know my PC friends.
I'm a Chris Do Tribe guy, right?
I like that.
It's, yeah. And so what you're doing, though, is you're going beyond that. You're at the top level.
Yes, here we are. The top of the brand ladder is empowerment. Talk to me about that.
So that's where, as someone who's joined the brand, which is what you do with brands, you don't buy them, you join them, is saying, I don't know what I would do without Chris Do helping me understand all this stuff. I mean, I wouldn't be making as much money. I wouldn't be as happy. I'm totally bought in. And my life wouldn't be as good if you took that brand away from me. So that's at the very top. And your customers are going to be at all these different levels, but you want to see how many have moved up to the top. So that's a way to measure the overall success of the brand. Now, as far as your part in the brand, that's a little more difficult. You have to decide what it is you're contributing to make that happen on the brand ladder, and then explain that. So a lot of it's just being logical about it and just saying, I know what we're trying to do together. Here's how my part's going to help. And so it's a bit of explaining. And if you know enough to know more than that, more than what your part is, now you're becoming more valuable. Now you're someone to listen to.
Right. Would it be fair to say, like, when you engage with a company that wants to enlist your services, that you probably want to establish a baseline, some kind of metric, like let's measure something first, and let's make an effort towards improving that, whether, like right now, let's just say they're at the lower rung of the ladder, and like we just have satisfaction. We're just barely doing what it is that we tell people we're going to do. We want to move them up to delight, and then you come up with ideas on how to add a little surprise.
Yeah. Yes.
That you go beyond expectations, and then you can measure that. Maybe customer surveys, satisfaction things, you rank things, something like that.
So the first thing is to have this language, right? So that a lot of my books are just about creating. That's why I have a dictionary. It's creating a language so that you can talk with business people in a way they'll understand it. And it doesn't mean using their language, but it's using sort of a language that everybody understands and that you could easily explain, that makes sense to both sides. So if you talk about engagement, they're going to get that.
Yeah.
And they're going to understand how engagement leads to customer loyalty, and loyalty leads to higher profits. But if you can talk about higher profits too, I mean, that's what branding is about. Branding is a way to get more people to buy more stuff for more years at a higher price. And every business owner can appreciate that. And then you just have to say, like, here's how we're going to help.
Yeah.
But already you've given them some information that they didn't know. They didn't know branding was supposed to do that, right? So, I mean, that's what my Level C program is trying to do, is teach all that language to people, and little by little they absorb it so they can talk about it without, in their sleep, and make sense to people who actually are going to hire them.
Yeah. a lot of stuff to process here. In case you guys are joining us, who is this wise gentleman sitting across from me, and who am I, and why am I reacting to him in this way? I am going to just admit I'm a Marty Neumeier fanboy for sure. I think I have almost all of your books. I had to track down this through a used bookseller, and I was like, I'll get it any which way I can get it, because I knew you were coming here. I'm like, let me track it down.
Yeah, this one is rare. I don't know. Maybe you can get these like used on Amazon or something.
The gray market, maybe eBay, maybe.
Maybe
Yeah.
eBay.
Yeah.
This is a little dictionary, paper dictionary, that was commissioned by Google because
Oh, wow.
they wanted to use all my language, my system, my understanding of branding for their clients, their big high roller clients. You know? And so they started like a little school, and my dictionary is the text that they use for that. So I updated it from the earlier version, put in a lot of sort of Google terms, and so that one's pretty interesting. But I have a even newer one, more updated, that you can get on Amazon. It's a ebook, so it's it's,
Okay, and that is
hyperlinked.
The dictionary of brand from A to Z. The dictionary of
It's
brand.
called Brand A to Z.
Brand A to Z. Here we
Yeah.
go.
And you can get it actually free if you just sign up on my website. Just subscribe.
Okay, we'll include that link in a little bit. And as I was talking, Marty's authored 8 books and probably has a couple of more in him. But we've talked about the brand gap, and I refer to this a lot. I also love Zag, and right now I'm just like rereading this like a gazillion times. This is the brand flip, and we're talking because some of you guys are probably super excited about hearing the way Marty articulates branding and our role as creative people and what we can do. There is a brand master class that you started out in Europe, in London, and you're bringing it here back to America. And if you guys weren't able to sign up because the tickets sold out pretty quickly for Los Angeles, the next time is in Philly. Do you know the date? We should have Andy here for this one. Andy, type it in.
My partner knows.
Yeah.
If you go to levelc.org,
Level C. Yep.
all the dates are there. So Philly's the next one.
Yep.
And there's seats there. And then if you want to be a little more exotic, you can go to London. It's a fun place to do it.
Yeah.
And in London, we're going to do Masterclass 1 followed by Masterclass 2, the first time that we've done that one. And then after London, we're going to Dublin in Ireland. So that'll be fun too.
Yeah, I love both those locations, by the way. Yeah. And we'll get back into this a little bit. I put a pin on this to talk about the 5 levels of Level C. But I do want to read a little bit of something from the brand flip here, because a lot of times you read books and you feel like a little bit smarter and you learn a few new words. But what I love about your books is that I can apply what it is I'm reading. There are frameworks built in, and there's a lot to think about. From the brand gap, I think it was the onlyness statement where there's like this structure, and I started to use it. Now, I have to say you're a far superior writer, and this is not like false modesty, because when I read it, it makes sense. Everything clicks. Every example you gave was like, oh, so good, and then you try to do it yourself, and you're like, okay, this is
like taking
why.
golf lessons. Like when you're taking the lessons, you're hitting the ball 300 yards, and then you can't do it on your own the next day.
No, I'm not even that good. I just watched you do it, and then I went to swing and went right into the lake or wherever it went. But there's some great frameworks. And now we're looking at our community and the brand that we're building around the future. And I remember having a management meeting. I turned to the teams like, let's stop talking about ClickFunnels and marketing and retargeting and all that kind of stuff. Yes, we do need to do that. But I want to talk about how we empower our community, the pro group. And I've made it like our mantra to sit there and think about how we can achieve these 5 things that you talk about in the book for our community. And I want to go over it. Personal growth. How do we help our community grow? How can we give them emotional support? That was number 2. How can we help them to achieve business success, make more money, charge a higher rate, do fewer pitches, whatever it is, we want to help you grow in your business. Social status. And that's not something we think about. Like, how do we celebrate the people who are doing a great job and help them rise in esteem among their peers and to achieve fulfillment? So you guys, if you get nothing from our talk today, remember those 5 things. Whether you're a solopreneur, if you run a big firm, if you're managing a team of 100,000 people, think about your customers in that way. And if you can do that, that's the top of the rung, empowerment.
Right, so go back to the definition of what a brand is. It's a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or company. So that means it's not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. And once you understand that and start thinking about what that means for you, it changes everything. So that's the big sort of flip. Is in your mind, you have to realize it's not about you, it's about them and what they achieve. So if you have customers or clients, think about how is their life transformed by what you're doing in some small way? Or how's their company transformed? And you got to be aiming at that all the time, not aiming at your own success, and because you have to worry about that. But that's not what's really going to make you successful. It's doing something big for your clients. And once they understand that they can't live without you, all things are possible.
Okay. Let's see, Mark, is there another good question? Thanks for kicking us off with that question. I don't want to prompt any of it unless you find like a really good question, because I have more things I want to, okay, I'm going to prioritize my questions over your questions. We'll just keep going here. So Marty, before we went live, we were talking a little bit about how you were the reluctant salesperson, but you did it and you achieved success. Like even in the first year, you're like quadrupled your business. But you were sharing with me something that we have to recreate for our audience here. You talked about as the Neumeier design team, your pitch was, I've got a presentation on 20 ways to sell more software. This sounds genius. Tell me about it. And who could refuse this at this point?
Yeah, this is a breakthrough for me. This is it's the perfect question after what we just said about like, how are you going to do something for, what are you doing to change your customers' or clients' life? Mm-hmm. I really wasn't fully getting it at that stage, and but I did know I had to specialize, so I took up the specialty of software packaging and figured out every part of what a software package needed to do, and ways of measuring it and ways of testing it and all that. And so I had it. And I put together a typical portfolio showing here's all the great work we did, and here's what we did on this one, we did this for this company, and so forth. And then here, here's some of the results we got. For instance, for Apple, they said the president of Claris, which was Apple's software division. I asked him how it went. He goes, "Are you kidding? No one told you?" I said, "No." He said, "We got 40% increase in sales across 15 products without changing one product."
Wow.
I went, "That sounds really good." He goes, "Yeah, that's 40% with no extra work. An extra 40. You don't know how much money that is. Like I'm a hero." And I said, "Can I quote you?" His name is Bill Campbell, just a wonderful guy. He goes, "Yeah, you should. Yes, definitely quote me." So I had that slideshow kind of put together, and I showed it to a guy who had nothing in common with. He was completely a marketing guy and a retail consultant, helping software and hardware retailers to sell stuff. Like, it's just not my world. Even though my packages are in those stores, I really don't think about it the way he thinks about it. So I said, "Would you kind of look at my slideshow? And because I think it'd be great if you recommended us to some of your contacts because you know all these retailers." He goes, "Yeah, I'll look at it." So I looked at it, and he didn't say a word through the whole thing. At the end, he goes, "Well, where's the ending?" I said, "What do you mean? I showed you all the stuff." He says, "You didn't tell me, like, how much money this is making for the client. Like, why are they going to spend money on you? You didn't even say how much it was." I said, "Well, we designers don't talk about
it's kind of gross.
Really. It's all, it's depends on, the assignment." So he said, No. Just tell me how much it costs and how much it's going to do for me."
Right.
And I said, "Well, Bill Campbell said, that they got 40% increase." And he goes, "You're kidding me." He goes, "That's your ending right there. If you don't say that, you're out of your mind. Let's go back and do that over." And then I realized another client had said, "Look, we've got, you did a series of products for us, and we got a 500% increase after that." I went, "Wow, that's really good." So I started collecting those and using them to prove the value of design.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a measurable thing. You do a package. The product was selling X, and now it's 10 times X or 5 times X. So that's something you can put in there, and you should. Does it really tell you that much about why that happened? No, it doesn't tell you anything. But business people aren't as geeky as you think about business. They just want something that they can tell each other. Mm-hmm. So give them something true that sounds like a business result. Mm-hmm. And you're all happy, and just keep learning how to do it better.
My business coach used to tell me that they need a repeatable story, and you gave them plenty. 40% increase, 500% increase. Those are some like they forget the rest of the presentation,
Right.
and they just go back and like, we needed this guy. They didn't change a single thing, and they sold 500.
And I think an important part of that particular pitch, aside from here are the results, where it was, and here's how much it costs to get those results. And so I was smart enough to realize that if those results were like amazing, I don't know if Landor could get those kind of results. I don't think so, because I don't think they thought about it very much, like how to actually accomplish what they needed to accomplish. Let's see, I forgot what I was going to say. Where were we? Take me back. I went off on that side road.
I don't know where we were at either. So let me think here. I was talking about the repeatable story,
Yeah.
and about the impact you were able to create, 40%, 500%. They forget the rest of the story, and this is kind of like what you need.
Yeah, it's like, so the main thing I need to tell you is I forgot it. So,
Perfect. See?
so I gotta go. It'll come back to
Okay.
me. Yeah, but that was just a huge, experience for me to see that you didn't need to be the biggest company to just wipe out the biggest company. You just
Right.
needed to be so specialized that they couldn't afford to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so the rule is the bigger the market, the more you need to specialize, because there's more competition, and you'll do better if you do less.
Can you guys hear that? The bigger the market, the more you need to specialize.
Right. The smaller the market, like when I was in a little town and I was the only designer, I had to do everything. I was like a country doctor. They needed me to do everything.
Right.
And sure, I sewed up all the business because there wasn't much competition.
Right.
But it only went so far. So it's all about that. So if you want to compete in the big world and make good money, you need to specialize more. And that's the counterintuitive thing. You think, like, well, then I'm going to be ruling out all this business that I'm getting now. I can't do that anymore because now I'm just going to do this little sliver. So I would encourage you to think about it in a different way. Think about it as if there's enough money in that category and you got a lot of it, and let's say that category is growing.
Right.
That could be huge, right?
Yeah.
You can grow with the category. I just think that's the way to go, specialize. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do other kinds of work. So all you people that are worried about all the clients you're going to have to say no to, don't worry about it. Just take that work.
Yeah.
Just don't talk about it.
Right.
Just take it. You got it. It's profitable. Talk about the one thing you can do that nobody else can do. And talk about it in a really clear, powerful way. Make sure they understand you're the only one that knows how to do this. And you'd be surprised at what that does for you. And you'll still get other work from that you just won't talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I had a software company and I did the software, they might say, Apple said, can you do the Claris logo for us? Yeah, charge a lot of money for that. Because it's Apple, right? They got to make sure it works all around the world. And that means traveling around the world and testing it and all the kinds of things we did. So it was probably, I don't know, $500,000 to do this little logo that was just type that you could buy for $40. But it was the right type and it was the right solution, and they were all really happy and felt very strong about it, so it was valuable. And we made a lot of money. We just never made a big deal out of that because it's not what we do. It's not our niche.
You were talking earlier about segmentation and how different companies don't talk to verticals of other things. Software doesn't talk to hardware, and hardware doesn't talk to retail. So when you were able to pick a lane, which you did, business, retail, software, packaging, if that sounded like you were the guy to call, and you could basically outdo a firm that was probably 100 times your size and start to charge. And I want to talk about this a little bit.
Right.
How much were you able to charge for this business software retail packaging back in the day?
Right. So allowing for inflation, I mean, it would be a lot more now, but probably triple it, and that's how much we would be charging
Okay, so guys,
today.
keep that in mind. Take these numbers
I'm
and
guessing
triple it.
triple.
Yeah.
So we started out doing packaging at the same price as other firms were doing it that weren't specialists. Like Landor and Primo Angeli, who did a lot of food packaging and really beautiful packaging, but not specialized in software. And we took us a couple of tries to get up to that level where they were, and that was at about $10,000 per package.
Okay.
It's basically 6 panels of a box, and whatever goes on that, right? And for us, it meant also testing. Well, actually, at the time, we didn't test. We didn't know about that. Apple got us into that. They forced us to do it, and it was the best thing I've ever been forced to do. So $10,000, and then we started getting up to 15, and as we got more, when we could say, look, all we do is software packaging. Look, here's five examples. It was probably every one we'd ever done. Here's just a cross section, a cross section of what we've done, so we get more and we can charge more. Now, once we got to the point where the retail stores were recommending us. Like, a software company would go into the CompUSA or Fry's Electronics, and they say, look, here's our product, we'd like to get it into the store, and they'd say, well, the package, really we find packaging is very important. Nobody can really test your software, and so if the package doesn't pop on the shelf,
Right.
And it doesn't look like yours, you really know what you're doing. And the reason they thought they knew what they were doing is because we'd been in there, in Silicon Valley, testing them and talking with the managers and the salespeople, and we indoctrinated them over a few years. And so they now had all the answers, right? And
Yeah.
they say, oh no, you got to have the name really big on the front. You got to have some symbol. You can't put all the screenshots on the front of the package. Nobody
Right.
wants to see. They want to have that on the back.
Right.
You're just not doing it right. So, okay, they'd say, well, what should we do? They'd write out our phone number,
That's fantastic.
and they'd say, use these guys, like a prescription. So they'd come to us and they'd say, oh, we got to use you guys. We were told by CompUSA or Fry's.
Right.
Okay, so at that point, the price was $60,000. Now, we're doing the same work as when we were making a profit at $10,000, but now we're charging $60,000. So you see how that works? Now, we are also better at it after a while. And we really knew that we could make a lot of money for companies. And it was so measurable because it's a package. It's a little more difficult when you're selling logos and trying to get $100,000 for a logo when they can get one for $1,500 or something someplace. But there are ways of doing that too.
There are so many layers to peel away from this one story, this one example that you have that I would be remiss not to point out some of them. Before we went live, you were telling me at the end of the presentation of your carousel slideshow of the 22 ways to sell more software, and that they would ask you, so what's the price? And you were saying $10,000, even though that's more than what you have ever charged, and you were doing something very powerful. You're dropping an anchor, and eventually you got that 10,000, and you blew past, which seems kind of almost unfathomable that you could take on Landor, own one section of it, and do 6x of what they were charging and beyond, and just keep going. You went in, you were so well known that you actually went into these big retail spaces and you educated them on what you need to do, so much so that you became the de facto authority, and you're a words guy. They were using your language to tell potential manufacturers, this is not going to work here. And you guys don't know this, but retail stores, these big chains, they have a lot of power because shelf space, very valuable to them. They put a dud on there, they're not making money. And so it behooves them to say, we're not going to accept this, go hire Neumeier Design Corporation. That's who you need to work with. Amazing. So now they're doing your selling for you. When you specialize and you're as good as Marty is, people sell for you. Incredible.
Yeah, and that language thing is really important. Having the words and keeping it simple and making your how you express your work, making it memorable is super important. So that's one of the things I try to do in my books is give people that language so they can just take it and use it. I mean, a lot of it I took from somebody else. Talking about software companies, one of them that we had, we ended up doing, 50 packages for them. They just kept, after a while, they were testing packages with no software in them to see if there was a market if they built that software.
Ooh, this is like early prototyping here.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
like product prototyping. Like,
Right.
Here's a. Would you like this product? And people, if they went, oh yes, they would go. They would program it. They would build that product. So we were doing a lot for them, and after a while, I got more and more comfortable with the people I was working with there, and I talked with the head of the whole product division. And I said, so we've been doing a lot of work together. This has been great. It's fun. We like working with you guys. And it's just, I hope it goes on forever. why did you make that decision to use us when you didn't even know who we were in the beginning? What was it? And my contact said, it was the zag. I said, the zag. Remember what you said? When everybody zigs, zag. So, okay. That
Title for the next book?
A book.
Yeah.
Because I just remembered that story. It's like,
Right.
that word stuck in his head, and I want a title that'll stick in people's heads, so it's zag. And
Right.
Seth Godin said, his review of it, if you read it, says, before you even read the book, you know one thing, this is the best title of any business book ever. So it's all about how you name things, how you express things in your work, and if your work is specialized and you do something that nobody else does, or do it in a way that nobody else does, you got to name those parts. You have to name the things you're doing, and that'll help you sell it. It's all, you don't even know when it's working, but you find out later. Usually, it's like, because like you say, they tell other people.
Yeah. I have one little quick question, and then Mark, you have somebody lined up. He's giving me the signal there. Take me back to this awkward Marty doing the sales pitch, because you shared that, like, when you picked up the phone and you wanted to get one of these meetings and talk to them about the 22 ways to sell more software. Take me through that pitch. Like, how did you do this? Because people need, you guys can take notes here. You guys ready for this?
Well, you had to dial it.
Yeah. Dial?
I think we had dials.
I think you had buttons.
We didn't even have the buttons.
No, come on, Marty.
We probably had the buttons.
Come on.
So push the buttons.
Yeah.
It's like, I push it and hang up. It's like, I can't do it. I have it written out.
You pranked them.
I mean, I just, like, it was so hard. But I'd get somebody on the phone, and they like pick up the phone because they probably didn't know it was a sales call, and they're used to not getting that many sales calls. Right. If you've got their number, it's hard to get the number, but they'll pick it up, and I'll say, okay, hey, you don't know me, I'm Marty Neumeier, and I've got I do software packaging, and you're in the software business, and I'm the guy who has kind of helped shape how a software package works in the store, and I think we should know each other. And I have this slideshow called 22 Ways to Sell More Software. And, no rush. Whenever you're ready, whenever you think you're interested in this, I will bring over a slideshow called 22 Ways to Sell More Software, and I'll share it with everybody for free, and you'll know all my secrets. Tuesday, yeah. 15 people, good. Yeah, cool. I'll be there. See ya. It's like, they were like, you don't get any feedback like, hey, that would be great. You just get, okay, Tuesday. And how many people can I bring? 15? Okay, great. And I'd be there, there'd be 30. So huge room of people, and I'm the guy giving the slideshow, and with all the questions, they would go on for like 3 hours. Just talking, it was a 45-minute slideshow that ended up 3 hours because they want to know everything about it. Now, once you get to that stage, who else are they going to hire? I mean, it's like, if they go to somebody else, another company, Pentagram or Landor, and they said, well, what do you think about, what should happen on the side of a box? Or what do you do with the top of the box? And they don't know. They're going to go, can't hire these guys. Or they say, how do you know your design is going to work in the marketplace? And they go, well, because we are experienced. We've been doing this for a long time. They go, no, not going to do it. Neumeier design team, they test. So we just basically sewed it up, and then when you get to the point where you own that category and there's nobody else that can compete with you, that affects profit margins. You can your price goes up, if it's valuable, and the amount of money they were making in software, I mean, it was really expandable from hardly anything to billions of dollars. So this is not a big investment for them.
It's a drop in the bucket.
It was huge for me. It was like, I couldn't believe
Yes.
That they were paying me this much money.
Yeah.
So I went from being like broke all the time, like most designers, to having to be able to buy another house and to upgrade my Toyota Tercel to a Honda. Well, times are tough.
Yeah.
And people think like boomers, they got it made. They even buy it.
Right.
Well, now, sure, but it took a long time, and you have to learn how to do it. But you can do it. That's the whole thing. It's not magic. It's just like figuring it all out, trying things, trial and error, putting it together, find out who you are, what you love, get it out there, make sure that you know everything there is about that. Life gets better.
Yeah. I'm going to say this just so that everybody's watching. You're probably going to want to rewind this and loop this part where Marty does his sales pitch and study it, figure out his framework, his process, because it's the most natural, true, genuine way to do a sales call that I've ever heard. This is so, you were like, I wish this was one of those competition shows where I could hit the golden buzzer and the confetti rains down on you and balloons and everything. That was pitch perfect. I wanted to applaud, but I didn't want to break your story there. So you guys re-listen to that part, see how he structured it, high piece of content, high value. You know how good he is because when they don't ask you any questions like Tuesday, because to open up their appointment book, that's a big freaking deal. To say that, can we invite other people and all the executives,
They're taking
all the
these
decision
people
makers
offline that are these highly paid executives to listen to something for
Yes.
it ended up being 3 hours.
Right.
And with rapt attention.
When you go from 45 minutes to 3 hours, you know pretty much the fish, you don't have to fish anymore, the fish has jumped in the boat and you're ready to just take
is
home.
jumping in the boat.
That's done.
And actually, that's the way you want it to seem. You don't want to have to sell or push. Pushing is a tell for clients. Like, oh yeah, they really want the job. They'll just say anything to get it. But I never I'd say, we're not for everybody. It's really expensive. So part of the thing is when I showed them the price, I wanted it to be more than I even wanted to get because
Right.
I wanted to make sure they understood that this is super valuable.
Right.
And we can always argue about the price later. If they
Yeah.
say, we loved your, it's just like you're way out of our budget. And then say, well, how much way out are we? Well, it's like 10,000 over. And I said, well, what if we compromised?
Right.
Well, yeah, maybe. But usually it was more like, we want the best.
Sure.
So we have no choice.
Right. And through specialization and your testing, you were able to spot and see patterns that these other generic firms could not see.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you can say, we always put the screenshots in the back. This is what's on the front. These are the colors. This is what works with authority because we've tested it. Okay, that was perfect. Let's segue to another question. Mark, take it away.
So we have a lot of young designers who watch our show, and a lot of the young designers who are aspiring to be brand specialists. What steps do you recommend so that they could up their game?
We already answered that question.
And you touched on it, but they're wondering kind of like, okay, as they progress,
I'm going to say it for Marty. The first thing you do is you buy every book that Marty's written, and you read them, and you reread them, and you highlight them, and you take notes, and you try to incorporate this, and you get the language. Now, this book, Brand A to Z, is new to me, so I need to go through this because you can see that Marty is very specific in particular about language and words. And when you use the right words to describe something, you communicate to the other person, they know what they're talking about.
That's it. Yeah, so I think that's what I would suggest too. You read my books in order. You can go online and Amazon and you can see the dates when they were published.
Yep.
The Brand Gap is the first one, then Zag. It's actually the order that my brand teaching program follows that same order. It starts with a general idea of what branding is
I
and
see.
where people fit, and then it drills into strategy, and then it opens up a little bit and so forth. So. And once you've gotten everything you can out of the books, taken it as far as you can, then maybe sign up for a master class.
Yeah.
We like to have people that have read the books, and not just come out of the blue because they might not pass.
Right.
They might not pass the test, and that would be very embarrassing. But so far, everybody has read at least one of my books, probably
Yeah.
The Brand Gap, and so they're primed for this.
Yeah.
And usually they've been in the field for a few years, so it's not like they're just out of school or something.
Yeah. Okay, so we will include a link in the description below with our affiliate link, guys, and the order in which you should read them. And I felt like this, and thanks for reminding me of this. It's like, I think Zag's like the philosophy, the primer, and I'm sorry, it was the Brand Gap was the philosophy and the primer, and Zag, it got a little bit more tactical, and like I could get into it a little bit more, right? Is that right, or did I mess that up?
Zag is about differentiation. What makes, just like I've been talking
Yes.
about, like how did I become successful in Silicon Valley? I specialized. So what is that like? So that is actually the bedrock of branding, is that difference. A difference that people can believe in, right? They see it, they understand it, they get it, that this is how you're valuable in the world. This is the lane that you're in. So the question at the center of this book is, our brand is the only blank that blanks.
There's the onlyness.
The
right?
only,
Yeah,
the only. And that's a very high bar to say you're the only at anything, but that's what you're shooting for. And so that's the centerpiece of everything I do right there. So if you just want to go right for the strategy, Zag is the book to get. But I do recommend that you understand branding first, so maybe Brand Gap and Zag are really good. When I was writing this Brand Gap, the publisher came after me. They said, well, we saw you give a talk. We want you to write a book, which hasn't happened to me since. But it was really great. And I said, okay, I have to come up with some ideas. I've got some thoughts. Let me get back to you. And they flew out to California to talk about it. And I said, I got 2 books. I don't know which one to do. I got one that's called The Brand Gap. They, ooh, that's good. And then I have one called Zag. Oh, that's good too. And so I told them a little about it, and they said, oh, this is an easy thing. You do The Brand Gap, and then you do Zag. So I sold two titles in one meeting. And that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Because first you find out about the general layout. What's the game? What's the playing field of brand?
Yeah.
Where do I fit? Oh, this is kind of cool. And then you get to this part about differentiation, which is the first part of that book, and you go, this is really counterintuitive. I'm not sure I'm getting this. I don't understand how this works. So Zag is the next one to read, and it explains exactly how it works. And once you've got those 2 things, you could pretty much build.
You're in pretty good shape at that point.
You are
right?
pretty, yeah. So the rest is just nuance, I think.
Yeah. So I always recommend this because people always ask us the same question, like, what course should I buy? I'm like, you know what? Why don't you look at all the free content, or just take small steps, read the books or listen to the podcast first. There isn't a shortcut, guys. Read the book, and then you're primed, and now you know. And when you take the course, and hopefully some of you guys will want to take Marty's masterclass that's happening in Philly, and then back to London, and then Dublin. Participate in that way, and then you just, it's layers. You just peel it back so that you don't get overwhelmed. I would say
don't try to absorb it all at once.
Yeah, it's not
a lifetime of learning, you know.
It is,
and you got a long life to do this. But I just keep making progress little by little, and make sure you understand whatever you're learning, and really understand it and absorb it, even if it's just one thing a month. Like I really get that concept, and you remember it all the time, and you add that to your, you know, your repertoire. You're going to get there.
And if we apply some of the things that you're talking about today, even in the way that you learn, I know I've probably read Brand Gap probably 12 times now, maybe more. Zag, I don't know. I mean, at some point the books are going to fall apart because I'm going over and over. Rather than spread yourself out wide, you can buy these 2 books, read them, stop, think about it, reread them, because you're going to pick out new bits that maybe were just too much for you to process the first time. Something else that you talked about now, you've had a lot of practice writing because you've had years of writing and editing the magazine critique, right? And
well, I started out as writing advertising copy and learned how to do that, and it was like really hard, but I could write a headline, and then I could write maybe 20 words of body copy and make that perfect. So, you know, I just learned little by little. So after critique, though, that's what really gave me a lot of strength in writing, because, you know, you have to write 3,000 words in a couple of days, and it has to be good.
So maybe that's another tip, is to practice articulating your ideas by writing, maybe even do public speaking, but at least start writing and formulate the things that you think you've learned. And maybe you can pick up maybe 1 or 2 books on business and marketing, and I think you have a pretty good foundation to build your house of branding on, I would think. Okay.
Yep.
Mark, are we good with that?
Yep.
Okay, and I think I could sit here and talk to you for 14 hours, but I think at some point, you and I, if you have time, I'd love to have lunch with you. How do we wrap this up here? We need to kind of finish it strong, and maybe it's another story, something else you want to talk about, Marty?
I want to talk about my latest book, because I love it.
Yeah.
I love writing it. It's different than the what I call the whiteboards. Yeah, Scramble.
Oh, Scramble.
Scramble.
Yeah.
So I've been writing these whiteboard books, which are very simplified. The fewer words, the better. You know, just get it down to just pure gold, and illustrate it and make it interesting. And those work great. But I realized that as you take branding into a more collaborative setting where you've got executives that you're working with, so this is advanced branding, not just being a designer, but being involved in advising companies. It's a whole different can of worms, because you've got a lot of different personalities, a lot of people protecting their turf. This is where things go wrong in companies. It's people at the top being Machiavellian, basically. Not that they set out to do that, but that's just the way people are. And so how do you how do you get through all this complexity that you have, this human complexity? And I think the best way is with a story, so I decided that I would write up all this brand stuff as a thriller. So it's a business thriller, so a new category. And it's about a company that, the head of the company is young. He has only been in the job for a year. He started out as an architect, so he's a creative person. He led this architecture firm to get to be like 200-300 people, like amazing number of people, and it's very successful. And one of the clients, a hotel client that they were building hotels for, said, "Why don't you come and run our business, because you're already running a pretty big business, and you can design amazing hotels, and so why don't you run the company?" He takes the job, and the first year is a disaster. Not his fault, but he's facing all kinds of headwinds, as we say in business, that he doesn't know how to deal with. And so the board of directors gives him an ultimatum. They say, "You have to reinvent the company in 5 weeks or you're out. We can't tolerate it anymore. We're going to go out of business." After this business has gotten to the size, 3,000 people in 40 years, suddenly in 1 year we could lose the whole thing. So it's up to you to reinvent it. So that means changing the strategy of the company. So brand strategy becomes very important. So that's just page one. So he's like in trouble from day.
Okay.
And he gets picked up by an Uber driver who asks him a few questions that just like totally stun him. So he becomes a major character, the Uber driver. Becomes his personal driver, essentially, even though he's an Uber driver. So it's that story of how this young CEO has to learn a new way of looking at things through the lens of branding to reinvent the company into something amazing, like really innovative, and it's awesomely innovative. And what happens when you do that? What happens to you? What do you have to go through to get that to happen? How do you deal with a board of directors who's maybe not so open to something new? How do you get design involved in this full, like all the way in and make it like a design-centric solution? All this kind of stuff. So, and this book now is the first book I've written that's outselling The Brand Gap. The Brand Gap is, just because it was first, it's been read by 23 million people. So, but this one is selling really well. So I know it's working for people. I know they're getting a lot out of it. And there's 2 more that I would love to write. So we'll see. If it goes well, I'm going to follow it up with the sequel and the next one. But it follows this same company all the way through to like amazing, awesome success. Apple sort of success.
So the book is Scramble, and it's a zag for you because previously these were kind of instructional.
Well, they're very graphic.
Yes, they're very graphic.
Based, and this is
narrative.
It's a narrative, but it's actually pretty visual. The words and everything include a lot of design and visualization of things. So the whole thing is to make it palpable for people, to bring in a lot of bring the 5 senses into the story. So you'll see a lot of stuff there. So it was a great experience for me. Not that different than the little stories I've been putting in these books.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
This is just an expanded one.
Right.
And my goal is to create an atmosphere where design is much more appreciated. So it's for you guys out there. So when you come into a company, you're going to get invited into the big room, the big conversation, and not just stuck in the back room, stuck in the basement with no windows.
If I don't know anything about branding, if I read this book, do I learn about branding through the narrative? Okay, this is perfect.
Yeah, I'm trying to teach CEOs about branding because they're the key to all this. If a CEO doesn't really value design or puts it down and lower on the food chain, that's where you are. You can't get beyond that. So I want everybody to understand what their role is. So it parallels all the other books, but it just puts it into a narrative. So for people who love stories or even thrillers, they're going to really gravitate to that one. If they just want the principles in the most memorable way, maybe the whiteboard books. Although these can, the stories can make things memorable too. Yeah,
and this is also now self-published. It's a Level C imprint there.
Yeah.
So this is great. And as you were saying, this is now outselling the original book, the Brand Gap, which this looks very promising for books 2 and 3. So I hope that does happen. You guys go ahead and pick up this book. Like I said, we're going to include all the links in the notes below. Marty Neumeier, like I said, honestly, I'm not just saying this. I could sit here and talk to you forever. But here's the good news. This is actually the prequel to the workshop. So that's happening at the end of February.
Yep.
We're looking forward to that. I think we're all sold out now. You'd have to know somebody on the inside to get a ticket at this point. I think we're sold out at 60. That's it, you guys. Go to Philly. That's the next location. Otherwise, you can make a beautiful trip across the pond, go to London or Dublin. And before we go, you talked about Level C having 5 levels.
Yeah.
And I said I put a pin on that one. So what are the 5 levels that you plan to teach?
So the first level is what we're doing here at the Future, and this is Certified Brand Specialist. So this teaches you where you fit in the big world of branding, where you're going to be most successful, how to collaborate with people, and make the most use of your skills, right? And start to learn the terminology, start to learn the language of branding. The next one is more like the book Zag. And that's level 2. Level 2 is certified brand strategist. So that's where you get to think bigger, like you really connect design with business success, right? And if you're lucky enough to be a strategist and make money consulting that way, that's a step up in terms of profitability for most people. Not always, but it is. The third level is brand architect. And so that's like going from checkers to chess to 3-dimensional chess. And that's where you can lead a whole company, basically. You can lead any part of branding. Very valuable in the world. The fourth level is brand instructor. That's where you get a chance to teach the same stuff that you were learning. And that really cements it in your mind. Like once you start teaching it, you know it cold.
Right.
And from there, you're ready to go to Brand Master, which enables you to be a CBO, Chief Brand Officer, in a large organization where you're working side by side with the CEO in full partnership. So that's a new job classification that wasn't there before. It's just coming out now, and by the time we get that in place, there'll be jobs. There are already people in our first class are already getting those titles.
Oh, wow.
They just heard about it, and then they just like tuned into it, and they're getting them for smaller companies or for divisions of bigger companies. But it's an emerging role that you can play, and that's not for everybody. Obviously, not everyone wants to be a leader and lead, hundreds of people. But if you think someday you may want to do that, we can show you how to do it.
Did you coin that term, CBO? I thought I read it in one of your books.
Yeah, I put it into The Brand Gap. My first book, I envisioned it right then. We have to have a CBO. There has to be someone. It doesn't exist, but we have to have it. So now it's starting to exist.
Okay, guys, on behalf of everybody I know that's watching live, first of all, thank you guys. Marty, it's been a true pleasure. This has been fantastic. I know this is going to get a ton of repeated views because of how much information you've shared with us, the learning, the sharing. Like I said, we probably need to do a follow-up on this episode sometime because I have 1,000 more questions to ask you.
No, that would be great.
So thank you very much, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And the team, Jonah, Mark, and Ricky, thanks, guys, for doing your bit. See you guys next time.